and then we'll hand over to Headspace and they'll take you through their side of the presentation. So we're going to kick off by going through just a little brief overview of what to expect coming into Youth Parliament for the year and walking you through the sort of 4 stages that we can split the program up into.
All right, so right now we are at the pre-training weekend moment of Youth Parliament. You should have or should be ready to get into deciding on policy proposals. This would probably be the around the time you would have had your first couple, maybe 1 or 2 meetings with your committee. So you should know who your mentors are, your fellow committee members. You should be in a comfortable, you can chat to your task force members, your relevant task force members by now, hopefully. And then later on the 23rd and 24th will be training weekend. It's the event that we're building up to right now, where we'll learn all skills we'll need for creating your bills, understanding civil engagement processes, and just going through and participating in the political systems of the state. So everything you're going to need to know for the rest of your Youth Parliament journey, all the nitty-gritty details, they're all going to be covered on that training weekend. So no worries if you feel in deep water or confused right now. Everything from A to Z will be answered during training weekend. So rest easy. And then after that, it's a long period between then and the residential week time, where you'll be creating the majority of your bills, so the body of the laws that you want to make. It's a lengthy period of time, but it is a very fulfilling amount of time, especially with the discussions you'll be having in your committees while you're creating these bills. I do rate it, that's why I've done it so many times. And then after that, we finally get into the residential week. It's a stayover at Nanyara for a week-long duration, and every single day you'll go and you'll debate, present, sponsor, and tear down opposition bills. It's a wonderful time for you to get your voice heard in a political environment, and it's very fun, very good, and you'll have so much time to recharge and have a fun time with Rick. And with those parts of the program, there is, right now we're not in the most stressful area of the program, but as we approach training weekend, you'll probably see probably feel a little bit of a spike in stress, because there is a lot of information and a bit of overload that can happen during training weekend. It's one of the reasons we're so keen about this Headspace collaboration, so that we can really arm you with as many tools as we can offer you to mitigate against any stress throughout your YP journey. And then in Parliament week, that's obviously where it spikes a big deal. But hopefully after training weekend and this session, you will feel confident and prepared for that stuff.
To sort of do a bit more of an introduction to who's actually behind running your Youth Parliament experience, George and I are part of a broader group of 18 young people called the Task Force. We're previous Youth Parliament participants who have enjoyed it so much that we've stuck around to help coordinate and put the program together behind the scenes. So you can see there's quite a few of us here today. We all have a responsibility to mentor a particular committee within Youth Parliament. So as a participant, you'd be in touch with either your solo or mentor pairing, who are there to support you through your entire experience. They're there to answer any questions you've got. We do all of the organising, and you'll receive a bit more of a detailed introduction to us at training weekend. But as a bit of a brief overview, who are these random people? We're the people that are here to hopefully give you a really fantastic experience while you're with us in the program this year. So you'll get to know us quite well over the coming couple of months. So what you can generally expect from the program, you can expect a lot of information to be coming your way. It is a fantastic learning opportunity, so really ensure that you're doing your best to soak up everything that we're throwing at you. We've got people on task force that are so knowledgeable in public speaking, in how to write legislation. It's a really valuable opportunity. So while it can be a bit overwhelming, I really encourage you to put your all into learning as much as you possibly can. We've got, of course, a decent bit of socialising. I work with recreation for the program, so we're there to make sure your experience is nice and balanced. We're here to support you, make sure you get to know other like-minded young people as well. There's something really special about coming together with other people who care just as much about bettering certain aspects of society as you do. So you can really look forward to getting to know all these other great young people around South Australia. Along with that, there of course comes people that don't think exactly the same as you. And even in my personal experience, Youth Parliament was my first opportunity where I was exposed to varied schools of thought, people who held different opinions to me, and people that I could have healthy debate with about issues that I cared about. So you can really look forward to learning about the perspectives of others, learning about other points of views on issues you care about, and really being challenged to defend why you feel the way you do about certain issues, and why your bill is going to address the issue that your committee has set out to solve. On top of this, we'll of course take care of you. We feed you food, we keep you fed and watered the entire time. And we're really there to provide you with a well-rounded experience that allows you to feel empowered in civics, citizenship and parliamentary engagement, along with meeting like-minded people and feeling empowered to make change in your communities. So there's a lot to expect from the program. There's nothing quite like it out there, but we're definitely really excited to get started with you all.
And on that, the best thing that you can do for yourself to get through this Youth Parliament year, it are pretty much preparatory and mindset deals and things that you can do for yourself to prepare you for what you want to get out of the program and map your goals. And just, general communication and being open with yourself, your task force member and your fellow committee members, making sure you have that sort of willingness to communicate both your limits and your needs to those people. It's really going to make it a lot easier for task force members to be there for you in ways that matter throughout the program. So limits in terms of learning or anything like that, or dietary requirements for one, just make it so much easier for us as your support system to get you through this program in a way that isn't like going to be anything unenjoyable or inexperienceable. And generally the best thing you can do is just take a breath when you need one and inform people around you when you need that break. YP is an amazing program, but it shouldn't be the forefront of your life during its duration. It is secondary to your well-being and your life and your commitments. Making sure that you keep that as a primary focus is one of the best things you can do. Keeping your perspective grounded in your life is just going to make it like so much clearer and so much more enjoyable when you go into this program.
Absolutely. So if you really put all of yourself into the program, you'll get so much more out of it. And so having sort of walked you through that timeline a little bit, given you a bit of information about what to expect and our advice for helping to make the most of your time with us in the program, we'd really like to hand over to Ali, Aoife and Matt from Headspace Adelaide, who will take us through their side of this collaboration, and they'll provide some really handy tips about managing stress, what to do in certain situations, and it'll be really beneficial in conjunction with your Youth Parliament experience. So I will stop sharing my screen and they can take it away from here.
Great, thank you so much, Georgia and George. I'll quickly share my screen, make sure we've got it in presentation view. Hopefully everyone can see that. Great. Oh, there's subtitles on. That's really cool. Okay, that's a new function I've never seen before. I'll try not to let that distract me. My name's Ali. I'm a community engagement officer across the 4 Sonderled Headspace centres in Adelaide. And with me today, I have 2 lovely youth ambassadors who I'll let introduce themselves properly from our Headspace Adelaide Centre. So maybe we'll go Aoife first.
Hi, my name's Aoife. I am a youth ambassador from Headspace Adelaide specifically. Yeah, nothing much else. I'm a uni student studying psychology. So I'm really passionate about mental health and, giving these workshops and letting you all know about these topics.
I'm Matt, similar to Aoife. I'm a Headspace Youth Ambassador, specifically from the Adelaide Centre. I've been an ambassador for, I think, nearly 5 years now. So I love the program. I'm really passionate about, I guess, sharing our presentations with you, and I hope you guys get something out of it today.
Great. I'm not sure if you can see like my where all the thumbnails are on the screen. Is that coming over on the shared screen at all? Like, can you see your faces? Okay, I didn't know if you could see that and it was interfering, but that's all good. We will proceed. Before we get into more of the informational stuff about Headspace, we would just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting on. We value their cultures, identities, and continuing connection to country, waters, kin, and community. We also pay our respects to elders past, present, and future, and we are committed to making a positive contribution to the well-being of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people. Perfect. So I think we'll get into a little bit more about what Headspace is. I guess that's a great starting space for a lot of us.
So have you heard of Headspace before? So feel free to put this in the chat, or not even just, think about, have you heard of Headspace before? Have you seen maybe material for our centres, or maybe different kinds of media, or maybe you've seen some bits and pieces about our eHeadspace and our online counselling, whatever that is. And they feel, like you can put that in the chat or not. Easy. And here's, sorry.
Oh, sorry, go on, Aoife.
There you go, Matt.
All right, cool. So a little bit about what to expect at Headspace. First and foremost, as most people, I guess, who do know Headspace know of us, we are a mental health service, but we also offer some other services as well. So we've got, we help people looking after their general health. We've got GPs on site at many of our centres. We can also help with alcohol and other drug issues, work and study support as well, and also participation in, I guess, activities and within the community. One of the other roles of us youth ambassadors is to go out to events around Adelaide. You might see us. We think that's a really big part of, I guess, life, getting out involved in the community. Specifically with Headspace Adelaide as well, or with all Headspace centres, it's an entry point for all young people, so aged between 12 and 25. And it's focusing on sort of early intervention and help seeking, but it's a really good place to start if you are sort of feeling like you're going through something or you just want someone to chat to. Headspace has a lot of great resources and is a really good spot to begin that. At Headspace Adelaide, we have no geographical catchment areas. So we're located in a city, but if you live closer to another Headspace centre but feel that the centre in Adelaide is a better fit for you, you're welcome to come to us. And additionally as well, all of our services are at no cost, which is a really big pro of our service. And sort of, as we mentioned earlier, we offer support for a whole range of issues, and we're able to do that through partnerships with a lot of other organisations where needed. And one last thing to note as well is that anyone, you can refer yourself or someone else can refer you. And similarly, if you are worried about a friend or someone like that, you can help them go through that referral process yourself.
So to summarize all of that amazing information that Matt just said, we've got a little video here that would just kind of walk through what you can expect if you were to visit a Headspace centre for the first time, and hopefully it works.
Headspace is Australia's national youth mental health foundation for people aged from 12 to 25. Since 2006, hundreds of thousands of young people have accessed help at Headspace services. all shapes and sizes.
Oh, I think, was that muted the whole time? Oh, okay. All right, that's fine. A lot of that information was said by Matt anyway, so we will just keep rolling with it. Sorry about that. Specifically at the Headspace Adelaide Centre, if you were to come and visit us, we are located on Wakefield Street. So you can find us by all the colours on the outside of the building. And here are our contact information as well as our email. On this map, on the second one, you might be able to see us in the bottom right-hand corner. There's like a little location pin. But if you're ever lost, you can just simply find all of our contact information online or on our social media as well.
So the youth ambassadors at Headspace Adelaide. So as we said before, that's what Matt and I do. So youth ambassadors essentially do roles where we do things like these workshops. We'll do them in person or online through schools, sporting clubs, and other kind of youth-related organisations. We also do meet and greets at the centre. So if you were a new intake at the centre, you might be met by a Headspace youth ambassador on your kind of intake, just somebody to show you around the centre, maybe give you your information packet, maybe talk you through some things if you're not quite sure, or you're not there's something you need to know that a Headspace ambassador can tell you. That's something we can do. But we also do things that aren't necessarily the workshops and the meet and greets. So if Headspace is working with another organization at an event, we might do their chill out spaces, or we might do some fundraisers out and about in the community. You might see us. We did Holy Moly recently, actually, which was really fun. But yeah, so basically the Youth Ambassadors is just a volunteer program for people between the ages of, I believe it's 16 to 25. And yeah, we do all those and more. So thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to jump into a little bit of a quiz for you guys about some sort of mental health facts and figures. So I think what we're going to do, it's a little bit hard on Zoom, but we're thinking when we ask a question, if people are happy to pop in a T for true or an F for false in the chat, we'll take a brief pause after we ask the question, let everyone get their answers in, and then we will reveal the answer.
Great. So the first statement we have here is that 25% of young people will experience a mental health problem during adolescence. So if you think it's true, pop in T. If you think it's false, pop in false. Awesome. Lots of T's coming through, which is great to see. And you're 100% correct. So yes, 25% of young people will experience a mental health problem. So 1 in 4 young people. And that is why Headspace targets the age range that it does. So we see young people aged 12 to 25. And we are an early intervention service. So we know that there's a lot of changes and challenges during this time of our lives. So we want to get in as early as we can to target those and decrease as much stress as we possibly can.
So true or false? There are usually only 1 or 2 factors that contribute to mental illness. Oh, you guys are switched on. Yeah, no, that's false. So essentially, kind of mental illness is a very complicated thing, and generally the effects are wide-reaching. They can come from many different places in people's lives, and they don't need to just be 1 or 2. For some people, it might just be 1 or 2, but for generally, it's all those different webs of things going on in your life, whether that's home, school, work, all these things can contribute to kind of mental illness.
So true or false, 75% of mental health problems emerge before the age of 25. Seeing a lot of T's coming in, and that would be correct. It is true. So similar to what Ali was saying before, we know that the ages before 25 is such a sensitive time for people. We go through so much change, and it can be a really tricky period. There's lots of stress. And again, that's why Headspace targets the population that we do, because there's so many mental health problems occurring around these ages.
True or false? Feeling down or flat from time to time means you have depression. You guys are speedy. This is great. So this one is false. We think it's very, very normal for you to feel down. We all are human. We all experience sadness and that everyday emotion. It's when you experience it for a longer period of time, and we say about 2 weeks, that we would really encourage you to seek help, whether that be through a trusted, teacher or a friend or a parent, or maybe someone more professional or an expert in the area, such as a service like Headspace.
If you're worried about your mental health, is it better to try and figure out things for yourself before seeking help? So yeah, same thing, true or false? Well done, well done. Yeah, that's false. So there's kind of two parts to this. There is the really, if you're having an issue, there's never a wrong time to consult a professional, even if you feel like it's very mundane, very maybe not important. If it is affecting you, if it's stopping your ability to cope, if it's stopping your ability to feel well, then you know what, it's important. It's important to you. So it's important to go see help. And on the other side, it can be really hard to deal with these feelings on your own. Very, very hard. And you really, sometimes you need that extra person to kind of bounce those feelings back on for you to truly understand what's going on.
True or false? Asking for help with a mental health issue is weak. Lots of F's coming in pretty quick here. Very glad to see that. Be a bit worried if there was many trues coming in. So yeah, obviously this one's false. And asking for help can actually be quite difficult, as Aoife sort of just touched on. It can be a really big step, but I think the more we go on, the more that people are starting to, I guess, become aware of mental health issues, and the support that you get from people for reaching out for help really is so great these days. And it's more of a sign of strength than weakness. Absolutely.
Great. So that is the end of our quiz, and you guys are obviously extreme geniuses in the mental health field. So props to you all. We're now just going to get into a little bit of what the difference is between mental wellness, a mental health problem, and mental illness. But before, I guess, we get into definitions, does anyone maybe want to have a go suggesting what they think maybe either of these are? So if you have your own interpretation of what mental wellness may be, does anyone want to share that? That's okay. If not, we're obviously happy to share. So we'll start off with mental wellness. And when we talk about mental wellness, we just talk about the ability to cope with day-to-day change and to cope with those day-to-day stresses and be resilient in the face of those changes. It's being able to work and study and kind of live freely and to our fullest potential. When we talk about a mental health problem, we talk about those little day-to-day changes kind of affecting our ability to function daily. And that can be, we notice maybe changes in sleeping, we might notice changes in our appetite, we might notice ourselves maybe withdrawing from our social groups. But it's when those changes last for longer than 2 weeks, we would classify it as a mental illness, and that is a clinical diagnosis. So when we are looking at this slide, we're also looking at it as a continuum. So none of these are permanent. These are all very temporary. You might find yourself currently in the little mental wellness bubble, and that's amazing. But sometimes, as we are all humans, this can fluctuate, and we might down the road find ourselves going through or experiencing a mental illness. But what's really important to know is that that is very temporary, and you can bounce back from that.
So, here's another slide that just kind of wraps this all up. So mental wellness is about being able to work and study to your full potential, cope with day-to-day stresses, feel connected to others, and live your life in a free and satisfying way. So that's pretty much just, encapsulates everything Ali just said. And here's some of the warning signs of mental health problems. So, loss of interest, feeling low, doing ordinary things gets harder. It just takes a lot more effort. Taking more dangerous risks is a really big one. And this can be anything. This can be not eating as well, driving a little too fast, things like this. Withdrawals and feeling overwhelmed, because in nature, of course, even for introverts, people need, they need connection, and they want to be out and connected to others. And if you were before and you're starting to kind of withdraw, that's a big one. Using alcohol and drugs to escape, which is actually related to risks as well. And changes in sleeping and eating are big ones. We have, again, just down there below, there's that kind of 1 in 4 young Aussies experience mental illness stat that we kind of mentioned before in the true and false.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about psychosis, which is an example of a mental illness. And I guess the reason that we talk about that is because at Headspace Adelaide, our centre, we do have the early psychosis program, and we are the only Headspace centre in Adelaide that has that.
Wonderful. So I'm curious to find out first, has anyone heard of early psychosis before, or psychosis? You can either pop in the chat. Yeah, some. Oh, great. Well, we've got a little video here, and I won't mute my slides this time, that will show a young person's experience with psychosis.
My transition from my ordinary waking state into a psychosis was so seamless, I almost missed it. It was like that feeling you get after 1 or 2 glasses of wine. I was seeing people and objects for the first time. I was caught up with everything having an opposite. I would stay up late, searching for reasons why I felt so good. Had I been enlightened? Had I found Jesus? The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I was Jesus. I believed I had supernatural powers and was living in another realm. Psychosis is like being caught in a dream without knowing you are dreaming. Mania is 1 level above ecstasy. You start thinking that the universe is sending you secret messages. Things were fun in the world I was living in. My psychosis may have seemed like some absurd trick from the inside, but for my family and friends, it was distressing. They had never seen the signs of psychosis before. Always having these weird spiritual experiences. Then my wacky space adventures changed. I remember running around the house hysterically, screaming. I was admitted to a psychiatric ward as an involuntary patient, but I was so far into my delusions, I really had no idea why I was there. I suspected I may have been part of some social experiment. Being discharged was an alienating time. I had to come to terms with the fact that I'd been living in a different reality for however long. Then you float back to society and receive different antidotes and expertise on your own experience. I wanted answers as to why I once thought I was Jesus, or on a space mission to find David Bowie. Professional advice helped me understand psychosis. A sense of humour and sticking to simple things helped me step outside the stories I told myself and not dwell on the things that went beyond reason and logic. I'm now working as a peer worker and mindfulness facilitator at Headspace YP. In sharing and talking about my mental health, I found people are inclined to be more transparent about their unusual encounters in life. It's the exchange of different human experiences which has created a refreshing change in conversation, and it's one that I hope more people can be a part of.
So that's Headspace's early psychosis program. The program is a specialized early intervention for young people who are experiencing or at risk of developing their first episode of psychosis. Headspace, their early psychosis offers a holistic approach which tailors effective clinical treatment and practical supports to help young people live their best lives.
So as the video sort of touched on, we'll go through a little bit more about what psychosis is. So it's a condition that affects the mind where there's some loss of contact with reality. Specifically, there's symptoms that might affect someone's thoughts or beliefs or perceptions, emotions, and behaviour.
So here we've got some symptoms that are commonly occurring with psychosis. So if you're experiencing a first episode, you might notice changes to how you may be thinking or what you're believing, and this can be in the form of confused thinking or delusions. You also might notice some changes in perception, so changes to how you're receiving sensory information from the world, and that can be in the form of hallucinations. We've also got changes in emotion and behavior, so just changes to how you feel generally or how you're behaving or presenting yourself to the outside world.
So here's the prevalence of psychosis. And I think looking at these stats, you can see why Headspace has focused on an early psychosis program in particular, is because generally the average person's onset of psychosis is in their late teens to early 20s, which is right in between our kind of our demographic, our age demographic. So it's co-occurring. So that means that generally it can be diagnosed with other illnesses, comorbid with illnesses. And this may include things like depression and anxiety disorders. So the prevalence in the population is about 3%. So that's 3 in 100 young people will experience a psychotic episode. And it doesn't feel like a lot, but when we look at the population on a whole, that's hundreds, if not thousands, of young people in South Australia alone. And you know, when 2/3 of people experience their first episode before the age of 25, so kind of bringing it back to why Headspace has this early psychosis program.
And so this diagram here sort of shows a little bit about why early intervention for psychosis is so important. It's a little bit hard to interpret this one, so bear with me. But essentially, you can see that on the y-axis there going up, you can see the development or trajectory of someone's development. And then on the x-axis there going across, you've got time. So the green line there sort of represents just a healthy development. And then where the orange line sort of veers off there, you can see that's the development of someone with psychosis. And you can see that at early intervention, that trajectory is actually so much closer to a, I guess, typical development. But with delayed intervention, you can see that that development really does start to differ from, I guess, a standard trajectory of development through the lifespan.
Yeah, and this can 100% be applied to any mental illness. Obviously, it's representing psychosis here, but we talk a lot about the importance of early intervention, and we can clearly see on this graph that, you know, when we do access or seek help, as soon as we notice these changes, you know, it's so much less gap or areas to cover to get back to experiencing our normal, healthy mental wellness. So we're just going to share or talk a little bit more about what actually makes a healthy headspace. And we'll share a little bit as youth ambassadors and Headspace staff ourselves about what we like to do. And then we'd really encourage you guys to share what you do to keep a healthy headspace. You know, when you're really stressed, what's something that's your go-to to help relax or get back into that mental wellness stage? Matt, do you want to go first?
I'd love to, Ali. So I think that over the years, you sort of get to know yourself and what works the best for you. I've sort of gone through a few different things, but exercise for me is something that's really constant. So for me, it's always the first thing to go when I get stressed. I find that, you know, I'm just like, oh, I don't have time to go for a run or play sport. But as I'm getting older, I notice that if I am stressed and I do force myself to take a little bit of time and do some kind of run or physical activity, that I feel a million times better.
Amazing. How about you, Aoife? What do you do?
So this is kind of a journey I'm still on. I'm not necessarily super sure exactly what is the perfect stress release for me. But right now I found a lot of comfort in playing video games and being able to kind of turn my brain off for an hour or two and just not think about the world outside. And I know that's not necessarily the best way, and that's what I mean. I'm still working on it. But for now, that's worked quite well as in the meantime.
Yeah, I was very similar to you. Until probably now, and that's really crazy that I'm going through this now, but previously I didn't really know what worked for me. I was trialing like a bunch of different hobbies and like relaxing techniques that worked for a lot of other people, but when I would do them, they wouldn't necessarily work for me. And I think that's the most important thing I learned, is that everyone's going to have something different that works for them. And eventually kind of what I learned was everyone's always telling you to like, yeah, just like breathe and take some time for yourself. But I'm kind of the opposite. Like, I love to be busy. So when I wasn't being busy, I really noticed myself kind of getting more stressed and overthinking because I just had more time to do that. So while it's really important that I did take some time for myself, it was finding that balance that really worked for me that was like the game changer. So, I work a 9-to-5 Monday to Friday job, and that's amazing for me. And then I make sure that I have one day a week that I literally just do nothing. And I mean nothing. I don't even like go outside. I just like sit at home, order Uber Eats. It's the bare minimum. And I find that really works. It's like a perfect balance. So that's what I mean. Everything works for everyone differently. So I'd love to hear from everyone else, maybe what works for them. If you just want to like unmute yourself or maybe pop in the chat, go for it. I'd love to hear.
We just go?
Yeah, go for it.
I got to echo that. I really also love video games. Whenever I'm encountering like a problem that is just doing my head in, taking a step back and then looking at a different type of problem with a different type of platform entirely, and just like zoning out into that, sort of like just puts my brain on reset, and it just makes it so much nicer. So.
Sorry, if I can add to that, there's also the sense of accomplishment that comes with video games. So it can actually be that little pick-me-up some people need if things aren't going right, if things aren't quite, working as planned. Getting kind of a moment where you are doing things right and things are going right and you're actually solving problems can actually be beneficial.
And on that too, we have recently just released a gaming episode on our Headspace Adelaide podcast, which had young people talk about their direct experience with how gaming contributed to their healthy headspace and how they set those healthy boundaries. So if you love podcasts, definitely go listen to that. I'm also just checking the chat at the same time, and some really great tips are coming through. Some people are mentioning that they love to bake, walk their dogs and doing craft, reading, playing the guitar, lots of themes of animals, which is really cool. Flowcharting and action plan. Yeah, wow, that's great. Spending time with friends and family, listening to music, and taking a bath. I can 100% relate to that. That's really great. Eloise, I can see you have your hand up. Did you want to share?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm exactly like you. I have to be busy to stay not stressed, which is just, I guess, my experience of my mental health is that I'm most anxious when I'm like sitting there with myself and my thoughts. But so we work through that, and it seems really crazy to some people because they're like, what do you mean relax, you need to chill out? I'm like, I think my way of not being stressed is just doing stuff and feeling on top of it and productive. But I am slowly learning to do things like going for a walk, especially if, with a lot of the era that we're in at the moment is so online. And I also work a 9-to-5, which is on computer all day. So sometimes just having that mental separation between what is my work computer time and my fun computer time can be for me going for a walk and like resetting and saying, okay, now I'm in fun Zoom time with my friends. It's really interesting how different it can be for different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, by the way. It's really great to hear everyone's different experiences. Before we move on, does anyone else want to share? I know we had another one come through mentioning someone likes to do martial arts, which is super cool, and singing. I just love how everyone's so different. But if anyone else wants to call out, go for it. Otherwise, we'll move on to some stress-related slides. Awesome. All right. Cool. Aoife, do you want to?
Yeah, easy. So what is stress? So stress is a normal human response to pressure when faced with challenging and sometimes dangerous situations. And stress may evoke a variety of responses, and effects can be both positive and negative. So we see that. So stress can be a great motivator. If maybe you're a procrastinator like myself, it gets an assignment done. But on the other hand, when stress builds up, it can be a little bit like an avalanche. You know, all those little snowflakes or all those little bits of stress. And if you leave things too long, they get a bit overwhelming and a bit hard to tackle. And we're going to see later on about some of the things we can do to maybe break those down, find the ways to handle those small stressors and things. Those will be coming up in the next slides.
So yeah, segued beautifully, Aoife. Some of the signs that you are stressed, there's things like being irritable, doubting yourself, not being able to focus. There's a lot of physical symptoms as well. So we've got aches and upset stomachs here as well, difficulty sleeping, change in appetite, the list sort of goes on. So I guess like all things, it just manifests itself so differently for everyone. And there's so many different things to look out for and keep an eye on when it comes to stress.
Yeah, so very much similar to the things that we were talking about that we do for ourselves. We've got listed here some stress survival tips, as we call it. So things like writing a to-do list, maybe to feel more productive, or to actually physically like ticking off things. I feel that works really, really well for like accomplishing a task, and kind of relieving a lot of that build-up. Obviously seeking help, sharing that stress with friends and family, because they could have too gone through something very similar. Being self-reflective, and I also think being empathetic to yourself, and that kind of ties into positive self-talk. You know, we all go through these things, and it's very normal for us all to experience that. So making sure that you're not adding to that stress by being mean to yourself and punishing yourself for feeling that way is also really important. Rewarding yourself. So maybe if you're really stressed about an assignment, you could break it up by doing like 100 words, I say, maybe like 250 words, and you can give yourself an M&M or a packet of M&Ms. We all have different levels of reward for ourselves, so find what works for you. Setting achievable goals, being realistic with them as well. Taking breaks is really important. And sometimes even just like writing your thoughts down on a piece of paper can really just kind of put into perspective about the thoughts that you're having and maybe the stress that you're experiencing. Maybe to make it more relatable for you guys as well, not that these wouldn't be relatable, but you might experience some stress, as George and Georgia said, coming up into those more debating type scenarios in the future. And especially with the election, I know I myself as a young person am going through a lot of stress just by who's going to get elected and all of that things. And we all have our own opinions on that. But what I'd really recommend to everyone is just to kind of limit your social media intake, and that's a lot easier said than done. But obviously we're all following accounts and people that will influence our thoughts and kind of constantly put these opinions into our faces and all of this not even misinformation, but just this information, and it can sometimes become really overwhelming. So I just find when I've had a big day of media consumption, the moment I step away, I'm just like, oh my God, I actually feel like so overwhelmed from that. But there's so many great things that I can do alternatively, like these stress survival tips, to kind of relieve a lot of that. So make sure you're paying attention to how much you're taking in and what you're doing for yourself after that as well.
So here's get into life. And essentially, this is something I think Ali and I touched on earlier, was that not everything is going to work for everyone, and you shouldn't feel like a a certain kind of intervention or tip or activity should work for you, should be able to relieve your stress if it's not what you like, if it's not what makes life enjoyable for you, kind of being able to engage in things that, are valuable to you. And that can be really important, taking, 5 minutes to read something fun, a book you like, a magazine, if a comic, whatever really like is, your cup of tea. Maybe music can be a really emotionally enriching and also emotionally affirming kind of activity. You can kind of get a lot out of listening to music and listening to things you like, being able to identify with the lyrics, or get some emotions out, or maybe you listen to music to relax, kind of turn it on and just switch off, whatever it is for you.
And so another tip, I guess, that's really helpful is learning skills for when you do experience those tough times, because sadly we can't avoid them. There's always going to be moments that come up that are a bit more difficult to deal with. Something that can be really helpful is that when you've got something on your mind and you just can't seem to get it out, write it down. It seems like such a trivial little thing, but it's amazing how when you put your problem down on paper, it just can help you clarify what's going on. And sometimes it can kind of help put your problem in perspective as well. You can kind of remember that there is other things outside of that. Another good one as well is slowing down your breathing. Breathing exercises. So just taking sort of 20 deep, calming breaths. There's a whole bunch of different little sort of mindfulness skills similar to these as well that you can cycle through, because it seems to be a bit of a theme for today, but not everything will work for everyone. But it's really worth sticking with some of these skills and finding what might be helpful for you.
Our next tip is about creating connections. So making sure that you have someone in your life that you trust to be able to talk through those times when you are a little bit more stressed or overwhelmed. And this can look very differently for a lot of people. I know especially during COVID, we weren't allowed to do a lot of face-to-face connections. So we had to find other ways to do that, whether it be finding online gaming groups maybe we connected with, or Facebook or Instagram, people that we've never met before. Just finding alternative ways of doing that can sometimes be constructive if we don't physically want to go out and meet people. And also maybe just spending time with our family and friends doing like small little relaxing tasks that you all enjoy.
So eat well. This is an important one, but it's also one that's the easiest to kind of let go, because especially with things like Uber Eats, it's very, very easy to have not so great food at a relative convenience. And something to remember is to also balance that with, making, or at least putting yourself in a position where you can eat good food that is filling, that has lots of nutrients, that's delicious. Because when we're not, if we're eating things we don't like, it's much harder to stick with it than if we're eating things we do like. And you can find things that you do like by experimenting, get creative, maybe add an ingredient that you do like to something that you don't necessarily love, and see if that kind of helps, get that healthy food in. And also you can make it kind of connected to that, making connections. Food can be a great way to interact with others, kind of get involved, either if family is important, get involved with the family, with the friends, whoever that really is to you. And
And so another one, staying active. I guess staying active is an interesting one, because sometimes when we think of that, we can put a little bit of pressure on ourselves to do a certain amount of exercise or do a little bit too much. But just going for a really casual walk in the park, playing a game of frisbee, throwing a ball around, so breathe and flex. So just like literally stretching your muscles out, getting outside, doing a little bit of exercise can just be so helpful.
Getting enough sleep. Also something that's quite easy to let go of, and something that takes a long time to sometimes build a routine into. These specific tips encourage you to potentially set an alarm and try to get up at the same time each day, or going to bed at the same time. So once it gets to maybe 10 o'clock, if that's your suited time, then your body kind of naturally gets into that rhythm of being like, oh, I'm tired. And maybe doing those, implementing things into your bedtime routine that set that up as well. So maybe having a chamomile tea, or having a really nice hot shower, turning off your phone 30 minutes before, so your brain kind of is like, yeah, this is bedtime now. But technology can also be really helpful for potentially getting you to sleep. You know, we always talk about the bad side of it, but if you're someone who needs noise, you can definitely listen to some really great meditations for sleep specifically, or even like whale sounds, or something that, you know, gets the brain kind of in that relaxed groove. So find what works for you, and stick with it as much as you can.
Cutting back on alcohol and other drugs. So this is something that can really affect our moods, is things like alcohol and other drugs. One that I think we don't necessarily think about as much is caffeine. And having too much coffee can affect a lot of things, affect your mood, affect your sleep, affect kind of your concentration, your ability to cope with stressors, all those things. And I think one of the things that we see is energy drinks, and having an energy drink is it's a lot more caffeine than you generally should have. And if you're having one of these every day, that can be really, you know, that can put a lot of strain on your body and your mental health and your mind. So yeah, so, you know, stay busy with activities at times that you find it hard to say no. So maybe not going, maybe you have a routine with a friend and you go to the servo every morning before school or before uni. Maybe going, hey, can we not do that? Can we maybe we only go once a week. Or maybe for specifically things like alcohol, not going out when drinking is going to be involved. Maybe making plans where it's easy to abstain from alcohol, if that's something that's wherein you'd like to cut back. And then also make plans early the next day to help keep you on track. So kind of making those promises to yourself, those plans to yourself, can kind of give you the motivation to go, you know what, I have something to do. So, you know, I am going to cut back.
Great. Oh, sorry, Matt, I totally took over from you. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. So I guess now we're just going to talk a little bit about what to do if your friend isn't okay.
Awesome. Yeah, so we've talked a lot about what we do to keep a healthy headspace and to make sure that we are in a mentally well place. But sometimes it isn't us that's going through something. It's sometimes someone that we love. And we've just got here 5 tips that we encourage you to utilize if someone you know is not going through the best time. So we definitely obviously encourage you to talk to them, let them know that they're not alone and that you care. And to listen non-judgmentally, take their feelings seriously. So we talk a lot about active listening here. I think sometimes we are so focused on what to respond with. We kind of get into that counselor clinical mode and be like, oh my God, I have to respond like really clinically. I have to know what to say and provide advice on what they can do. But sometimes we don't know the answer. Sometimes we haven't gone through what they've gone through. So just responding with empathy and understanding and support is sometimes the best thing to do. Letting them know that maybe you don't understand what they're going through, but that you're willing to support them through this is a really great thing that you can mention. We talk about encouraging positive coping strategies. So kind of what we spoke about, what keeps us mentally well. Maybe you know what works for them. Maybe you know that they, as a way to relax, love listening to music. So you could create a Spotify playlist for them to relax when they're going through a bit of a stressed time. Or maybe you know that they love gaming or going for walks. So schedule a time to go for a walk with them, maybe once a week at a time that you know is going to be okay for them to do so as well. We talk about unconditional support and acceptance, which is, I think, pretty self-explanatory. But the most important thing that we want to get across here is that if you are really worried, to ask for help. Sometimes you don't know what the best thing to do is. So knowing that there are services and supports out there like Headspace that are available to your friend or your loved one going through a tough time is really beneficial to know, but to also prioritize your mental health during this stage. You don't sometimes realize it until you're kind of in the thick of it that you're being affected by this as well. And that's okay to admit. It's not a bad thing. You don't need to feel guilty about it. You're only human. You've taken on someone else's stress. Of course, you're going to feel stressed as well. So just remember that if you notice yourself kind of being affected by that, that you too ask for help and have someone to support you during that time.
There's just further resources. So we have our our website there, headspace.org.au/Adelaide. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So the Facebook and Instagram are specific Headspace Adelaide. Twitter is specifically just Headspace Australia. And then we also have a YouTube, though that is also just Headspace Australia.
And here's a little bit about our website specifically. So it's a really cool site that we've got these days where there's a lot of resources there. There's lots of different information about maybe different disorders or maybe different coping strategies. You can kind of, I think there's a little bit of something for everyone there, and it's worth having a browse through. We've now sort of got our spaces page set up as well, which is really, really cool. I'm stealing Ali's thunder here, but I'll keep going while I'm on a roll. Essentially what that is it's kind of somewhere where you can personalize the information that you find on the Headspace website. So you can sign in, make your account, find the resources that are relevant to you, and I guess just create a personalized little feed there, which is really cool.
Great. And kind of on that, we talk a lot about the services that we offer in centre, but we also have an online service that sometimes you might not want to go in and speak to someone face to face, and that's absolutely fine. So we have eHeadspace, which is an online telephone and counselling support open to our age range of 12 to 25. And you can talk one-on-one with an eHeadspace clinician. It isn't 24 hours, unfortunately. I believe it is open from 8 a.m. to midnight. But you can chat to someone for about 40 minutes, and you don't have to be accessing mental health support out of service. You don't need a mental health care plan. You can log on at any time, or not any time, you can log on during that time. And if you've just had a bad day, you've just had a stressful time, you can chat to anyone as much as you like. So you can do that either through email, you can do it on the phone, or you can do it kind of through like a messenger Facebook chat. And it's a really great, there's great options for everyone there.
So I think Ali mentioned before, but we have a podcast. And so this is hosted by our lovely Claire. And essentially, you can check it out essentially wherever you listen to your podcasts. I believe we do have it on Spotify and Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. But anyway, and we have lots of episodes on all different kinds of young people sharing their experiences about all different kinds of mental illness or different kind of adverse experiences or just general interest topics, and kind of get other young people's experience on them. So if there is something you're interested in listening to, it'd be worth maybe checking out and seeing if we have an episode on the specific mental illness experience or topic that you're interested in, and having a listen.
And just quickly as well, you can see a list here of the Headspace centres in South Australia, and you can also see the map showing just how many we have around Australia. We are a national service, and there are a lot of centres everywhere. I guess some of the ones in South Australia that might be most relevant to you guys, we've got Headspace Adelaide, where we are. There's also Headspace Port Adelaide, Onkaparinga, Marion, Ed North, Murray Bridge, Berry. For the Riverland, there's Mount Gambier, Port Augusta, Whyalla, Mount Barker, Port Lincoln, and Victor Harbour. So we're trying to cover most of the state.
Yeah, and I think as Matt mentioned earlier that we don't have any geographical catchment areas, so you might find yourself, closer to the Adelaide Centre, but you might want to, for some reason, access the Port Augusta Centre, and that's totally okay. You can go to that centre if you feel that that's where you'd like to go. And obviously, if you can't access any of these centres in person, maybe because you're in a more rural area, that's where eHeadspace can be a really great way to connect with a clinician online, or just accessing our online resources to see maybe if there's going to be a Headspace centre popping up in your region soon.
So need help right away. So something to remember is our service, the counselling service, is not a crisis service, and it is not an emergency service. So if you are in a crisis and need counselling or help, there's Lifeline. For other counselling issues, when maybe if Headspace, eHeadspace is offline during our off hours, things like Kids Helpline can be good. And if you are experiencing an emergency, it's important to get in contact with emergency services through 000.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us. We hope that you learned something about Headspace, or just about maybe a tip to utilise for a healthy headspace. Either way, best of luck on your youth parliament journeys. And I can't wait to hear more about the program down the road. Thank you.
Amazing. And a huge thank you to Ali, Eva and Matt for going through this presentation with us. It was super valuable. And fingers crossed we can look forward to some more collaborations in the future. But we're really appreciative, and we're happy to just double check that no one has any, or see if anyone has any questions. We're happy to take some questions.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions about Headspace, or maybe the services we offer? Anything we've talked about? Oh, thank you. Someone said it was really helpful. That's really nice. Thank you. Obviously, you probably have your hands full with, I do have a question. How did you get involved in your roles? Yeah, that's a great question. I was actually a youth ambassador volunteer myself. So very similar to Georgia, I kind of just stuck around because I enjoyed it so much, and they ended up employing me. I just refused to go, basically. And so they were like, oh, we have to give you a job. I got into a volunteer support position. So now I kind of manage the volunteers, which is a really full circle moment. I did a bachelor in psych, and this opportunity to be a volunteer, I saw it on social media. And I was like, well, I have to do that. And we actually had a workshop come to our residential college. And I was like, wow, I want to be one of those people that do that. So it was really a coincidental moment that an opportunity popped up right after. And I got involved, and now I'm here. Matt, Eva, how did you get involved in your roles?
Well, I don't know if if many of you know about the pathway to becoming a psychologist. You need a lot of so you can't be a psychologist after a bachelor's. You need to do your honours and then your master's. And even though that's not necessarily the track I'm on now, I knew that if I wanted to do a master's psychology, I had to get into some volunteering role, get some work in mental health, get some, or just general kind of human services type things to show that I'm to have these skills and this experience to kind of move on. It's a really competitive place to be, so volunteer roles are really important. And I go to UniSA, and the coordinator for psychology as a whole actually sent out this opportunity, and I thought, this would be a great, and it is a very valuable opportunity. And I recommend any of you, if you have time for volunteering with Headspace. I've done amazing things, and I've gotten to be part of really interesting situations and events, and I've been able to help young people learn more about what Headspace does and just general mental health topics. So yeah.
I've got a pretty similar story as well to Aoife and Ali. So doing a Bachelor of Psychology, was really keen to get some experience, and I saw the opportunity pop up on Facebook. So I guess that is one reason to follow our socials if you ever are interested in any volunteering role or any of the opportunities that we offer. It is worth sort of having a suss because there's some really great opportunities available. But yeah, saw the ad on Facebook and was lucky enough to get the position. And yeah, obviously I really like it because I've hung around for 5 years. So yeah, it's been good.
Amazing. Was there any other questions before we wrap up? No. Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much again for your time. Thank you for coming. Thanks, Ali, Aoife, Matt. We really appreciate it. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their evening. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.